Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn. We're looking at the Stonewall setup that 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐤 GothamChess recommended for white. The setup begins with this unusual move f4. Now, normally you're used to seeing e4 and d4, but this move is aimed at going for the setup with knight f3 later. Pawn e3, pawn d4, sometimes c3, creating these 4 pawns known as the Stonewall setup. Black sometimes plays this setup as well. So this is a very important setup to know how to face against. As black, I will teach you a very simple and effective setup, starting with the move d5. Most players play d5 or knight f6, and after knight f3, the move is going to be a little unusual. Rather than the typical knight f6, e6, and then bishop e7 setup, I will teach you a much better and actually safer plan, starting with the move g6. Now, before we move into looking at g6, let me explain to you why I don't like as much the conventional setup after e3, e6, bishop e7, for example, d4, bishop e7, bishop d3. The main problem here for black, this e5 square is basically in white's control. Your bishop gets stuck, and notice the power of the bishop on d3. When black castles, what's going to happen? You will get attacked rather quickly here. So that's why I don't like this plan as much. And after f4, d5, knight f3, I will propose to you g6 as the best way to handle the Stonewall setup. So white starts usually with this move e3, bishop g7, and now d4. One of the key ideas is to have this pawn triangle. And remember what I talked about, the e5 outpost being the key square. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the move knight f6, but I will show you an even cooler move that will fight against white's weakened squares such as f5 and e4. This move is knight h6. We actually don't want to block our bishop, and the f-pawn can get mobile in case we need to kick this knight. So this is very, very important. Now, white typically answers with bishop d3. In that case, we play bishop f5, and that's the second thing you have to remember in the setup. It's always a good idea to trade light square bishops. So the point being is that if white does take, knight takes, and let's say castles, black already obtains a very comfortable position. We can castle next. White can play, for example, queen e2 or c3. And now the point being is that black can play actively. You can play either c5, or you can start with the move knight d7. And if they play c3, one of the cool mechanisms of getting your knights to fight for the square is one of them going to f6, for instance, knight d2, and the other one going to d6. This is a very important idea. The f6 knight heads to e4, and if white gets the outpost, it's not a big deal. For example, after knight takes, this bishop is passive, and we're ready to kick the knight with f6. So this is kind of a dream position for black. Again, the bishop on c1 is poor. We can kick always the knight with f6. Very easy position to play. So let's go back a little bit and see what else white can try. So white can be sneaky. White may not take the bishop on f5 and may just, instead of bishop f5, castle. In that case, of course, we can take on d3, but that gives him an extra option to play pawn takes and cover the two weak squares, especially the e4 square. So this position is playable, of course, for black, no big deal. But why? We don't have to commit. We can just go here. And it's quite difficult for white to develop these guys. The moment white gets knight to d2, notice this bishop is quite passive. We can castle. And if queen e2, for example, we can play c5. We can have more improving moves. Again, even if we have to play c4 sometimes, we can still do that on our terms. So this is the setup that you shouldn't be afraid. And finally, white's last setup, maybe to fan shadow the bishop with b3. We castle. we're not too worried about bishop coming to a3. We can still execute the c5 plan. And if bishop goes to b2, again, nothing wrong with c5, because keep in mind, this tension favors black. Bishop on b2 is unprotected. That means he can never take this pawn, rather the pawn on c5, and black is comfortably better. So this is the position that we're aiming for. Again, the plan is slowly prepare the c4 push, and then make him take our bishop. We're going to take back with the knight, knight d6. You already know the general strategy. This knight's coming to e4. So let's go back and ask ourselves a question. Okay, what if white does not put the bishop on d3 and puts the bishop on e2? In that case, we could play bishop f5, but the problem remains that our knight is out of the game. So this is not ideal, although playable. Let me show you another cool idea. We're going to castle. White typically castle. And now, to trade this bishop, we have another idea to our disposal. This move b6. Okay, so they go for the setup. And now we can play bishop a6. You can play it now, or you can play it after inserting move c5, for example, knight b2 and bishop a6. The point being is still the same. Once the light square bishops come off the board, your knights are heading to f5. So this guy's coming here in d6. And this guy on a6 is temporarily out of the game, but it can get to c7, e8, and maybe f6. So this is one possible way, and then of course to e4. So very simple plan. White does not really have any attacking chances. Position is closed, meaning that you have time to maneuver and simply get a playable game. So does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
The one question I have is, instead of taking on a6, what if they go pawn c4?
Okay, so let's go back here. Good question. So after the move c5 or bishop a6, actually, let's even go back here. Let's say they play knight bd2 to be flexible, right, with the c pawn. Now if we play bishop a6, c4 is quite an option, right, for white. So maybe a smart way to start with the move c5, put pressure on this pawn, make him play c3, and now bishop a6. c4 would be a huge tempo loss. Moreover, it actually weakens his central pawns. So after knight f5, you see this e-pawn is extremely weak. And I don't even know how to defend it. If you play knight b3, so the bishop defends it, you see what's happening. This guy gets lost. You can even take with the bishop or with the pawn. In both cases, you're doing quite well. So these are the kind of positions that white is not enjoying because his center is getting destroyed. And moreover, this bishop is not getting into the game. So I don't see a way to avoid the bishop trade easily. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so in summary, going back to the original position, the flexibility that we get with this move g6, as I mentioned, is very, very good, because once white commits his pawns to e3, d4, that's a signal to us that we have to fight for those f5, e4 outposts, as I highlighted, and this move knight f6 is okay, but even better move is to play knight h6, and now this is our main line. The point is f6 pawn is not blocked, bishop d3 will be met by bishop f5, and bishop e2 can later be met by b6, bishop a6. Of course, you can castle, play c5 first. You have bishop a6 to your disposal. And whenever the knight gets to e5, it's not a very stable square because, again, f6 will send the knight right back home without any obvious advantage. So this setup, this anti-Stonewall setup, is extremely effective, and I highly recommend it for black. All right, do you have any final questions?
Let me think. So if you go this setup, so in this one knight h6 is a proposal. So if there's c3, what do we do is black. If it's just c3.
So it's kind of a waited move, right? So they're not showing us their hand, so we're going to castle. We wait for him to show us his hand. If bishop d3, we're happy to trade the bishops. If bishop e2, we're happy as well. We're going to prepare, c5, b6, bishop a6 plan.
So if they go instead bishop e2, knight b2, wait some more.
Yeah, so knight b2 is kind of like a wait-in move, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, they sort of decided that they're not going to develop the bishop quite yet. I think it's completely safe for us to play c5. And again, b6 next, or you can even start with b6 if you don't want to even bother with the pawn sacrifice, and prepare bishop a6 or bishop f5 at the right moment. And I don't think he can stop either of these plans.
Thanks, makes sense to me.
All right, so I think with this, we can probably conclude this lesson, how to face the Stonewall when white plays f4. f4, one other thing I should mention, is also called the bird's opening. And sometimes instead of playing the Stonewall with e3 and d4, white sometimes tries to play this fianchetto setup. It's kind of also called the reversed Leningrad Dutch, meaning that white is setting up the same setup that black does, such as this f5 followed by knight f6, g6, bishop g7. So against the Leningrad Dutch, which is kind of a cousin, right, and similar idea as the Stonewall, we actually employ the same move, g6. And guess what? Here we actually don't need to bother with knight h6. The bishop's already established himself. We go knight f6, both sides castle, and here I prefer black. Black has really nice space in the center. The knight will come to c6, and the bishop may stay on c8 for a little longer, maybe queen c7, maybe rook b8 and b5, and later fianchetto the bishop on b7, or keep it on c8 as an option for later play. Very nice position to play for black. So with this, you pretty much have every weapon to your disposal against the move f4, either going for the Leningrad Dutch reversed with knight f3, g3, or the Stonewall that Levy recommended for white. I don't think black is in any trouble at all. As a matter of fact, white has to be careful because of the light square weaknesses.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.